I believe the path forward is that we can actually come together with differing voices and accept each other's differing voices. And we figure out, how do we come up with ethics when we clearly, distinctly agree something different. But we need to come together and we need to have conversations and be in the same room.
Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast, where the truth will set you free.
Welcome. I'm here today with Heidi Mortenson, who is a business owner, author, podcaster, and licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm excited to have a great conversation. So, Heidi, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here, Ryan.
So, start off by telling me a little bit about yourself and your background.
So I live in Minnesota and I have 3 kids. I've been married for almost 15 years and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Minnesota. We have there's 4 different licensures, and so that's one of them. So I definitely focus on family systems and how we don't just have this diagnosis, like it comes from somewhere. And so that's something that I definitely specialize in. I started a practice in 2008. And throughout my journey of building this business, probably about 7 years ago, I ran into some bumps. And I would say these bumps were like personally struggling in my marriage, and then business wise, really struggling in the business. Like, I grew this business and that's so great and wonderful. Yay, good job. But there was a lot of things that I wasn't doing well and didn't really know I wasn't doing well. So I get it when people run businesses and they don't understand things that they maybe don't know, it's not their lane. So kind of quick, long story short, I ended up really surrendering my heart to God. Like, I was always a Christian, but I was lukewarm. Didn't really know that I was lukewarm. And like, God just started moving and started doing things. And we get business consultation. We get marriage counseling, all these things. God does all these things that it's all new to me, and find myself in all these interesting meetings and conferences. And I ended up starting a podcast. It's called Strong Tower Mental Health. And so I talk about faith and mental health. And I have lots of interesting topics that I talk about on this podcast. And I also wrote a book called The Brave Encourager. And then in the midst of this, throughout this, my husband left banking to help run the company. And I was able to really learn I'm not in the lane that I need to be. I was doing, trying to run this company where I'm not a process structure person, but the company needed that. And so we were able to streamline the company, build this business up. I was able to get out of the lane that's not my lane. I was bottlenecking the company. I was able to be creative and visionary and do the things that, God actually was wanting me to do. And we ended up actually deciding to sell the company. So a year ago, we sold it to the 2 women who were managing and running it, who my husband helped promote. So he's been a part of it. He now is back in banking, and I am now working for that company. So I still own a business. I still, I have publishing company technically, because I wrote a book, and then I also am helping a woman in her ministry this year. So I'm in a ministry school, so I'm serving ministry, but I still see clients. So I'm kind of doing a lot of different things right now, and kind of in this in between season to really just slow down and listen to what God wants me to do next.
Wow. So, you got a lot going on.
Yes.
So, one thing I'm really interested in, for like right off the bat, is kind of the shift for you in your spiritual life. Like, for me personally, I walked away from my faith for about 15 years. I was very anti-church, anti-God, anti-Christianity. And it was like almost like a Apostle Paul on the road to Damascus moment, where it's like, I need to get back on track. I need to start following God again. And I'm wondering if there was some kind of moment that kind of something clicked in your head for you.
There definitely was a moment. I very much was like hating my husband, hating my life, I felt like trapped in this business, trapped like, oh my gosh, I have children and what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm just so like, I feel trapped. I felt so hopeless. And I had this moment in my bedroom where I'm like, God, I'm supposed to be like joyful and happy. And I have this cross on my neck, but none of it looks like I'm an actual Christian. And I was like, I need you. I need you, Jesus. I need the real Jesus. I want you to help me. I need help. So it was like I surrendered. And in this moment, that's when that was that come to Jesus moment. Because as soon as it happened, there was like a little bit of hope. I could just feel it. All of a sudden, it was like a shift that happened. A little bit of hope came in. I recognized very quickly I was allowing a spirit of hate, so basically a demon, to comfort me in my struggle with dealing with my husband. Like I wasn't letting God help me. I was letting the spirit of hate comfort me because it did. It felt free. It felt very free to like hate. I mean, obviously that's not God. Like it might feel good in the moment, but I just kept getting in the spiral and it wasn't working. So that was my like come to Jesus moment, was being in this place of even almost where I wouldn't say I was suicidal, but I just like didn't have any hope for living. I had no hope. And so it was just this emptiness and this place of depression and hopelessness that I really like reached out and was like really surrendered to God instead of just I'm doing my daily devotions or I'm doing, and I don't want to say that Christians are fake, but I just kind of, it was actually real.
Wow. How would you describe your life after that kind of shift?
So it was very interesting. It was looking back, I can now say I think the Holy Spirit was like moving, and I've learned about the Holy Spirit. We have Father, Son, and then Holy Spirit. And I really didn't, I just read the Bible and like knew Jesus, but I really wasn't connected to the Holy Spirit very much. But that's really what happened. I was Googling things I never Googled. So on my phone, I would be searching, do miracles happen? Do healings still happen? Like, why am I searching that? I never searched that before. I find myself in a meeting, like a prayer meeting, and the guy there was like, I think Heidi needs to receive baptism of the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. And that same night I started praying in tongues. I mean, again, all grid. I don't have grid for any of this stuff. I grew up Lutheran. Those were the weird people, but it was like the power of God started to move in my life. It wasn't this just going through the motions, checking off the box. God became alive. The Holy Spirit was like moving me to places, moving me to meet people, like divine appointments, divine connections. And I started to like lose a taste for the things that he was not wanting me to do. And he was putting me in position of places where he's like, no, this is where you are. I started learning about prophecy and just encouragement and prophetic words that God's actually saying, like, this isn't because I'm trying to get a cookie cutter, genie in a bottle God, but like he's actually called me by name and he has chosen me and he has plans for me. So the Bible became alive to me because the Holy Spirit was showing me his life in the word. So I mean, I couldn't stop watching sermons. I couldn't stop reading books. And so since then, I've gone to lots of different conferences and it's like I can't help it. It's like I want to try to sometimes I'll be like, this would be so much easier if I could just be a normal Christian. Because it has caused like just, my poor husband's had to be on this journey of like, what has happened to you? And he's come along and he sees it and he believes it and he's been transformed too. But it's like I can't help it. Like the Holy Spirit is like, you are mine and I have you. And I'm saying, yes, go ahead, whatever you want. And so I'm just on this like fast track ride of basically being me the way that Jesus wants me to be. And I continue to keep allowing things that are not me to be pruned, to be burned up. Like I've got a lot of pride. I, can be very selfish, like all these things, like how I was as a leader. Like I wasn't safe all the time as a leader. I didn't know that. I'm this nice, sweet person, but I wasn't always safe. And so I learned how to be safe, how to be vulnerable, and how to really just be authentic.
Mm. Wow, I really like all that. I want to start getting into the different, because there's so many different facets of who you are and what you do. So I guess we'll start off with the podcast. You recently stopped recording the podcast, but you had been doing it for a while. What was kind of the theme of the podcast? What did you focus on?
So the theme on the podcast is really freedom in Christ, identity, and the combination of what does Jesus say about mental health and how he cares about our mental health. He cares about us being at peace. And so I really kind of bring out a lot of the biblical aspects of the Bible and mental health. And then I also bring in a lot of things that we sometimes like just don't understand, and like deliverance, inner healing. I've had people who see in the spirit and, we'll talk about that see demons and angels and things that kind of feel like it's really out there or it's for paranormal. but that it's actually God's design and it's in his word. It's in his Bible. And so I take, stories from other people, stories from myself and bringing experience, but like combine like, how is this biblical? What does God actually say about this? And I'm humble too. Like I don't get everything right. And throughout it, I kind of show that I can continue to learn and grow. And so I'll share some vulnerable pieces of my life and my story. And then I also do a lot of like I pray at the beginning, at the end. And so I that's been something that like because I'll do some speaking engagements. And when I do that, I really find that I'm like, I can tell these women have mother wounds. And so then I'll start praying for mother wounds, or I'll start, like I'll become your mom and I'll say, I am so sorry for what I did not do. I'm sorry that I didn't get the therapy that I needed to get so that I could be the mom that you needed. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And I'm so sorry. And so I step into like bring in healing and how the neuroscience of our pathways are actually meant to be healed, how God actually can heal us, the science behind it, the biblical aspects of this, and then how we can just live normally. He actually wants us to be healthy. He wants us to be free. We don't need to stay stuck in these places where we have these diagnoses.
Wow, I really like that. Yeah, my church here in Austin has a sermon series called Sound Mind, after the verse that God has blessed us with a sound mind, basically. And there's
So good.
there's a praise and worship song that we sing that goes along with it called Sound Mind. And I love this idea that, mental illness is not of God.
Right.
God has blessed us with a sound mind, and that's something worth pursuing in a spiritual sense as well as in a psychological sense as
Yeah.
well.
That's so good. I love that your church is doing that. I'm going to check out that song.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the next direction would be your book. Tell me about the book and what that goes into.
Yeah, so I wrote it in 2022. So a lot of the crossovers of what I'm talking to you about is also COVID. And during COVID, that was very interesting for me because I am a little more of a positive, happier person. That's just kind of my demeanor. And throughout COVID, I just noticed that was not the case for a lot of people. And I'm like, well, I am not afraid. I'm not, if I die, die. I know where I'm going. Like I didn't operate out of fear. We still went out. We went to restaurants. And I remember my dad, he's like 70. And that was kind of the biggest thing that shifted things for me. Sorry, I know you asked about the book, but I want to get to, I'll get to that. But I remember the first time we saw him after we heard about the COVID stuff. And I'm like, okay, do I need to like keep my distance from him or, all those kinds of things. And he just went in and like hugged the kids and hugged me. And I basically felt like he was saying, screw that. But he didn't say that. He just acted on, I love my grandkids and I love you. Like, I'm not going to not be with you. And it was like, I felt such a big sense of faith from that, like sense of courage of like, yes, that's who I am. Like, that's how I feel. Like, I'll go to COVID infested places to help people with their mental health because that's what they need. And so even through COVID, it kind of gave me this like courage of who I actually am, which is I'm not going to focus on what your pain is. I'm going to focus on what God wants to do through you as I guide you through your pain. And that's some of like, I've taken bipolar off people's charts. I've seen bipolar healed, but it didn't happen overnight. Like it happened when I'm focusing on what does God call you? What does God say about you? And where are your symptoms? So I'm tracking that at the same time. So it gave me the inspiration to write the book about encouragement because we so often, especially in the therapy world, are focusing on people's problems and we're focusing on what we're not doing well, what we're not doing right, all the things that are wrong. And it's not that we want to ignore that because we still need to track it. We still need to pay attention to it. But if we don't get a word of life, we will just, you're not going to improve by continuing to focus on what you're doing wrong. You won't. It will not happen. And so when you have someone tell you, like, you are a fire starter, you are a brave, a brave mother, you are such a kind human. And I see so much of the kindness that you do, like crazy things, but like things that are just really encouraging that like pull the gold. Like, hey, have you ever thought about going to med school? I really see you as a doctor. Like just things that someone says to you that you would never think of yourself. And I had this in my life. Like I had a supervisor tell me, he's like, you're going to have a big business someday. You're going to lead other people. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, like I wasn't thinking that, but here's the supervisor of mine speaking gold and seeing the gold in me and speaking it. And it literally like pulls it out. Essentially, this is kind of what prophecy is, but that's not, didn't learn about the depths of prophecy when I wrote this book. It's about encouragement. So I wrote the book about how we can bravely encourage others. But to do that, we got to do our own crap. We have to forgive. I have to like forgive and love my husband and see my husband the way that God made him, because he is an amazing man. Yes, he's not perfect and he's not, he has his moments, but God is calling me to rise up, to be brave in the midst of someone not showing me that love, and still encourage and still speak life. And so so the book really is about how we really can change the world by just speaking life to other people and to ourselves. So we first have to start with ourselves. We got to start with healing those wounds and recognizing things that need to be let go. So I kind of walk through certain things in the book where I like speak life to people. And yeah, and I would love to actually give you a word.
Yes,
Would
please.
that be okay? I'm like, as
Yes.
I'm talking to you, I'm like, I'm seeing pictures as I'm talking to you. Um, and I have to see if I gotta see. Okay, I think I have one. Okay. So you can do this with words, you can do this with pictures, you can do this with singing, dancing, whatever. Like you can do it with anything. But this is what I saw. So there's these mountains. I see these three mountains in your life. And I feel like what you do is you actually show people that they actually can go higher than they think they can't. And I feel like there's been times where it's felt hidden. Like if you can see the mountain has been hidden, there's been times where you felt hidden. But if you notice, the hiddenness was actually the tallest mountain. And so as you have had moments in your life where you have been hidden, you are actually being trained to raise up and to be the highest. So I just see this as like for me, what I'm seeing is a symbol of how you actually speak life into people, how you build people up. You see the gold in them, but you are actually the tallest mountain. And the sun, or we could say God, or we say the sun is shining on you and is guiding you the whole way.
I like that. I mean, there's a lot there for the spiritual message, but the first thing that came up to my mind was every summer I try to go to Colorado to go hiking. I love hiking in the mountains so much, and being like on the top of some of these mountains with this kind of panoramic view of the world around you is like kind of where I feel closest to God in a lot of ways. So I think that's really beautiful.
So here I show this to you and I tell you some of what I think, but that doesn't have to be what that means. You have your own interpretation. There's a reason why I picked this. I have a bunch of other pictures here, but this is the one that I picked for you. So God knew that that was what meant something to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So this is just one example of encouragement, and yeah.
Is that the type of thing that you use like in your therapy practice?
No. So I mean, yes, but not like I don't, yeah, actually, never mind. I guess I do. Cause using the pictures in something that's been newer for me this past year, because I'm serving this woman who has this Create Academy where that's what she teaches. So that's probably the last year. So that's why I say no, but I'm kind of taking what I already naturally was doing and then, oh, great, I can add pictures to it. But in my practice, yes, I will speak life. I'll pull the gold. I'll say things to my clients that I see like, you are so smart. You are so capable. I see you guys struggling and you're mad at him and she's mad at you, but you guys are such an amazing couple. And I'm pulling out and speaking life in the midst of the fighting, in the midst of the hard things. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I do in my practice while managing and paying attention to the symptoms.
I want to hear more about your journey as a therapist. What kind of motivated you to go down the therapist route?
So I have a moment in grad school. So I was actually a business student. My major was entrepreneurship and I had to take a general class and I took they had like a psychology of marriage and family. And so I just took this general and I loved the teacher and loved the class. And I had a moment in the hallway where I was talking to the professor about something. And it was like God came in and was like, this is what makes the world go round. Happy families. and I heard, "You will be a different kind of therapist." And then the next thought was, "What do I need to do to get a psych minor degree? How do I even do this? Like, I don't even know. I'm a business student. I think I was in my second year." And so then I pursued talking to my professor about how do I become a counselor? I didn't even know what marriage and family I didn't know any of the licensure, anything like that. So that's what made me do that, was the inspiration of the way that this professor taught. And like, for example, some of the things that he would do, he would talk about porn, and he would take, tough topics, and he would talk about it. And he'd be like, people think this is okay and people accept this as something that's normal. He's like, but when you really dive into this, when someone is looking at porn, they're taking away the beauty of their partner. They're taking away the beauty of their spouse. And so we're looking at someone else because as you're with your wife or your husband. And he said that that's not helping the marriage. And so he'd get us to kind of think. I love the professors that would get you to think instead of tell you how to think. And I was like, yeah, this is a really good point. And it just got me to kind of just question things and wonder things that I had already kind of, I'm a college student that wasn't really paying attention to a lot of things. And I just really appreciated that. But I think God was like, there was that moment where God was like, this is what I want you to do. So I still did finish. I was an entrepreneurship major, and then I added a psych minor to be able to go to school and continue grad school. Yeah.
That's really cool that with your therapy practice, the podcast, the book, your business, you kind of tied together both of those aspects with the entrepreneurship side and kind of the psychology and therapy side, that you kind of combine those.
Yeah. It's been interesting because sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like I really fit in here or fit in there. And because each camp, I love I love being with people in sales and marketing and business. But they sometimes don't really focus on, they're not very self-aware, some of them. And then when I'm with therapists, sometimes they're too squishy and too focused on their feelings, and they're, not as in tune with kind of structure and things that I think are actually important for bringing people into a place of health. And now I've been connected with ministry. And so that's a whole other thing too for me. And yeah, so it's been fun to kind of dive in these different parts of the world.
That's interesting. What year did you go through graduate school?
So grad school was 2003 to 2006.
Gotcha. Okay. So one of the things I cover a lot is political bias in these counselor training programs. And I'm wondering if back then, because we see a lot more of it in the last 5 or so years, I'm wondering if there was stuff that you noticed back then.
So because I don't know what I know now back then, really just took it as I'm going to learn, and this is what I need to learn. I didn't really have that filter to question things very much. I know that I did question, I didn't like undergrad pushed I didn't like some of the feminism that was pushed in undergrad. But then when I did graduate school, when we had to learn about different cultures, I think maybe because I had good professors, I actually liked those classes. Like when we had to learn about multiculturalism, I think they did a good job. I didn't feel like it was shoved down my throat. I didn't feel like they were saying the white man is bad because we need to focus on those of color, because it wasn't happening like that back then. And for me, I've always loved different kinds of cultures. And so I was like, oh, this is fun. Like, this is an interesting class. So like I told you, I didn't know what I know now, to kind of have that like thinking cap of like, are they pushing agendas? Because I thought the professor did a good job, and I was not feeling alienated as a white female.
So one of the things that I see in grad school and kind of in the therapy profession more broadly, I wouldn't say it's necessarily an overt anti-Christian bias, but there's kind of a mentality that that type of religious faith with Christianity is outdated and backwards. And ideally, you should kind of evolve beyond that. You and your clients should both kind of move past that to kind of like a higher stage of development, essentially. I'm wondering if you see any of that mentality.
Yeah, I would say that it is not even, it's almost like they don't even talk about that. It would, not that it was avoided, because see, I didn't deal with that until later. Like I would be on the board of different associations and I was like the only Christian voice. So I ran into it then. I didn't into it as much in grad school because I'm also looking back, I'm like, I was just so sweet and innocent. I'm like, yep, I'm Christian. Like I was so like boldly who I was. Like I don't think anybody had an opportunity to question me, but I just was, I'm a Christian and I love Jesus. And I just was comfortable with that. But I also was a little bit lukewarm, if that makes sense. So I feel like back then I had a foot in the world and a foot where I'm at now. And now I would definitely be more bold. I would definitely be questioning things, but I would do it in the way that, because I'm not a fan of shaming people. I'm not a fan of, because it doesn't get them to listen. They're not going to hear. Like for me, I would give a lot of encouraging words. I would be pulling the gold out of the teachers and professors who are trying to kind of indoctrinate with their beliefs. Because honestly, some of these people, Ryan, I don't even think they know what they're doing. Like I think they believe that they're they're doing this justice, that they're being kind. They think that they're changing the world and that we need that. So I think for me, my heart sees, because I see good in the gold and all, I don't, and I know some of your other interviewer people that you've had on your show would probably disagree with that and saying that I'm being naive. And, but I think for me, my message is more, I don't think it's going to get them to change if I argue with them. I think, okay, I don't mean to, you're not asking this, but I think that they don't know who they are and are wanting to get meaning from this justice or this whatever that woke ideology is, and that it feels really good because the greater good, a lot of people are believing that. So it's kind of like a religion, that everyone's supporting it. And this Christian religion, well, it's by a white man in the sky. So, and he just kills people. So why would I want to believe this white man who just kills people? They'll interpret different things and what they understand, which is incorrect. But yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not total. I don't feel like I'm
No,
answering you right now.
I really agree with a lot of that. I feel like there are some people who are kind of your kind of foaming at the mouth, rabid, fanatic, true believers. But I think most people are just kind of going along with it because, this must be the right thing. And I think there's some people that just kind of like, we say our pronouns and do a privilege walk and all this stuff because it was on the syllabus today. I don't think a lot of people have bad motives. I think most people have good motives when they push this stuff.
We didn't have any of that. So when I was in grad school, we didn't have pronouns. And even when they started doing that, I mean, I don't do that. I'm like, I'm Heidi. I don't know why. I still am like, I don't want to be dishonoring to you if someone's in front of me that I don't know. I can't help that. It's just, yeah. I mean, when people are wanting to tell you that you have to do something because they're uncomfortable, we're entering into their discomfort. I mean, it's like giving somebody, you're like buying somebody liquor who's an addict. I mean, I'm not going to support that and try to step into that. That's love. That's not love. Yeah. I mean, um, yeah, but I didn't have to deal with that in grad school.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. Tell me, you mentioned a little bit about getting reported to your board. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. So in the midst, and I can't tell like all the details, but I can just say that I got reported to the board by somebody who identifies as Christian. And so this is kind of where I've like really learned like, holy cow, just because you say you're a Christian, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And so God has really taken me on a journey to really understand what it means to be really close to him and to hear from him instead of kind of just like I've learned discernment. I did not have discernment. So looking back, I'm really grateful for the experience. So the report had some to do with what I was doing as bringing in faith into the session. So, a lot of what I had to defend was my faith. And that was most of it. There was some things about confidentiality Again, I can't talk about the case or anything like that. But I know that I had to defend the word deliverance. So the word deliverance came up. And so I was able to talk about that with the board. It was really awesome opportunity. And I really, really prayed up Brian for like, I had for like an hour and a half, I had people that prayed over this, prayed over me. And then I watched the recording of the prayer like 2 times because I'm like, okay, I need to just have God speak through my mouth in this. Like, and so I just presented myself as just very grateful. I was very honoring of the board and the association. I was very thankful. And here's the thing that I had to really shift towards the people who reported me, because it was the one, and then she got 2 other people to report me as well. I just was able to shift and get my heart to love them and to really see how God sees them and to just love them and forgive them and let it go. Because I mean, this, the poor thing, like, why would you I mean, I was the supervisor, or I wasn't her supervisor, but I was a supervisor. So I was a mentor. I was in a position of leadership. And so I just took ownership as a leader. Like, okay, I could have done this differently. I shouldn't have stepped in to this situation. I kind of overextended someone that I probably should have just said, nope, this was not my thing to step into, but I stepped into it because I wanted to help, and I shouldn't have done that. So that was so really there was some honest mistake on my end, but the fact that it was done by a therapist who identifies as Christian, that kind of tells you something. Like, why not just come to me and talk to me? And, like, so there's things so it really kind of brought a lot of, like, I wouldn't say distrust of the field, but just an awareness of how unhealthy we are in this mental health field. Like, because I'm not somebody that's like, I don't know, like, I'm not somebody that's trying to cause issues or do something horrible or wrong or bad. And so when I went in to defend myself, I just really positioned myself very honoring and grateful for the opportunity. And I think they deliberated for like 5 minutes and was like, we're dismissing this. And
Mm.
so it just gets dismissed. But there was like 17 charges on it, like
Wow.
17 things that I had to defend, and we had to go through and I had to defend each of these. So some of it had to do with faith, some of it had to do with confidentiality, some of it had to do with me praying for people. So it was a lot of interesting stuff, Ryan. And yeah, so
One of the things I focus on a lot is how unhealthy the mental health therapy field is, and you touched on that a little bit. Could you kind of expand on that? Kind of beyond this case to kind of what you're seeing more broadly.
yeah. So like when I talked about during COVID, I was very surprised at how many therapists just kind of seemed to get really freaked out from COVID. I was shocked. And because I wasn't, I'm like, aren't we the people that are supposed to help them? Like, we're supposed to be the brave ones that are helping people, kind of like an EMT when you see blood and you go in and you're bravely helping these people who are in distress. So to me, that's my job. My job is to help people emotionally, mentally, kind of like we're soul doctors. And that's so I was very shocked when therapists were just really, really depressed. And again, I don't want to be judgmental towards that because we are humans as well. But it was like everyone. And then they're putting glass walls in between them and their clients and wearing masks. This is a personal thing when we're meeting with people. Like, they need to see me and I need to see them. So all of that was very shocking to me. And so then from that, I had to really back up and learn and be like, okay, Heidi, you need to stop judging. You need to love them. You need to kind of get over yourself. Like, I had to kind of go through my own process of like, but then it also kind of shifted me to a little bit. Then I started to move into this kind of hopeless place of like, are we really like, is this bad that I'm happy? It was almost like I felt bad that I was happy and that I had to like hide it, and that I felt close to God. We still went out, we still traveled. Like, I didn't let things stop me from growing. And because of that, I actually stayed pretty healthy. Yes, I had some like, hopeless places where I was talking about, but that actually happened before that. So that was before COVID, where I finally like surrendered to God and like, but then I'm like, why are we questioning this? And so I think a lot of therapists go into therapy because of their own stuff, which I think can be beautiful because then you actually get the help that you need. But the field itself doesn't always celebrate growth and healing. and they almost get offended by it. So like if I would suggest to somebody, I think you could not be depressed, will get offended by that because the depression has actually been very comforting to them. Like think about it's like they'll say, I'm just feeling so depressed. And as I say, I'm depressed. My mom comforts me, my aunt comforts me, my therapist comforts
Mm.
me. And I get all of this attention because I'm depressed and I'm struggling. And when I'm doing well, I don't get any attention. I don't, because I'm fine. Like nobody pays
Mm.
attention to me. Nobody's giving me that affection. This is why encouragement is so important because you're speaking life into something that people we just see like, you're smart, Ryan. You're capable. You're a really good leader. Well, I don't need to tell you that. You just are. You know that. You're fine. You're good. But no, we do need that. And so then when it's actually kind of a reward to be in the hospital or to have a struggle because now I'm getting so much attention. Again, that's not the only reason. But
So
yeah,
people
go
kind
ahead.
of take on this like weakness or vulnerability or sickness as a core part of their identity.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what a diagnosis is. You're saying, I am depression or I am anxiety. And, people will wear that and say, well, my depression this or my depression, I can't do this because of my depression. So then you don't go to that party. You don't go out. You don't look into dating. You don't look into getting a new job because of your depression. And so then that just, yeah, you're right. It's like it's their identity and there's not life in that.
I want to switch gears for a little bit, talk about the gender wars, if that's okay. There's this big conflict between men and women in America, and you can talk about the women's side if you want, but I'm really interested in the men's side because men are really struggling in this country in a lot of ways, dropping out of the labor force, dropping out of education, mental illness is on the rise, addiction's on the rise, suicide's on the rise for men. You've got a lot of men who kind of have no hope or aim or direction in their life, and their time is spent playing video games, watching pornography. What do you see with what's going on with men in this country?
Well, I don't think they're being celebrated and honored, and they should be. I mean, I think it comes from a place of, because, like, if I'm a woman, I'm insecure because men are stronger than me and they can do more, whatever it is that I have to know who I am to be able to speak life into you. And I'm not, so I just feel like it's because we have a lot of people that don't know who they are and are very unsure in their identity. And so their identity is coming from things, their identity is coming from stuff that my identity is because I'm a white female and that's who I am. That's not who I am. That's just a part of me. And that's not, if I let that be who I am, there's a cap. And so there's a cap that keeps getting put on not just men, but there's a cap that's being put on everybody else that they don't even realize. So they think that because they're colored or they're transgender, that they're able to like succeed and rise up and get more because I'm male and I say that I'm female and now I'm this transgender and I'm becoming famous and I get all these opportunities. It's not real. It's not real because at the end of the day, when they're by themselves and they're alone, they have to deal with their crippling body that can't actually do the things that a body could do because they castrated themselves. Like you have to like now live with that is freedom. Like it's not real. So if that's not real, we have those people trying to tell the rest of us who we are. And so then it's just capping everyone and it's just stunting men because they're not able to fly. And so what I would encourage them to do is to not allow that to be what guides them and to step out into who they actually are. If you believe in God, God is who says who you are. Listen to that voice. Listen to the voice who's telling you who you are and break through that and rise above that and not listen to the cap of people who are insecure and don't know who they are trying to lead the narrative. Don't listen to that narrative. Be a different voice. Because I mean, I wouldn't, yeah, I mean, so I want to celebrate men and honor men. I honor you. I mean, you're stronger than me. I don't care about that. Like, I want you to be like, that is a good thing. And yeah.
So let's go to the flip side of that coin. When we look at women in this country over the last several decades, there's been tremendous gains in educational attainment and career success, but mental health has actually gotten worse. What do you see with women in this country?
Well, I would say similar things to where they're getting their satisfaction in things that are like sand, things that don't actually last. Attention for being an influencer, attention for like connecting with someone who thinks the same as them. So, like, that makes me valuable because I support transgender rights. So it's all empty things that aren't actually real. At the end of the day, they're still going home and feeling depressed and wanting to drink those 3 glasses of wine. They're wishing that, I'm trying to get to the gym and I can't get to the gym. Like, there's still we're still struggling with the same things. Like, just because you're trying to, change the narrative and women are able to do more, I just don't think any of that matters. Like, yes, we can have more people, more women do more things. That's great. But that's not, again, it's not what tells you who you are. It's not what gives you your identity. And yeah, I don't know if that answered.
No, that answered very well. A couple times you brought up the transgender thing, and I'm wondering, how you evaluate this issue as a therapist, particularly with how much emphasis there's been on transitioning minors, how you see that.
I mean, I see minors as they're struggling with their identity. Every single minor struggles with an identity. So, I mean, so as a therapist myself, I think it's unethical for therapists suggest I think that you're the opposite sex. Like, and that's where I think some therapists are doing is that someone's coming in and being like, my dad this, my mom this, there's just chaos in the house and they're barely even able to talk about that. And that but I think I'm struggling with my identity. Well, yeah, you are. I would be too. And so then the therapist then takes that and suggests, I think that you are the opposite gender. And then the therapist then is able to shift the narrative of therapy to talking about, I think that we need to talk about transitioning. So then they start socially to all this stuff. So the therapists, I think, have been causing more harm in people, especially youth who are coming in just struggling with real struggles. And what we need to be doing is focusing on building them up, telling them who they are. Okay, oh gosh, look at that beautiful painting that you painted. Can you do one for me? I'd love to see you draw. Why don't you take more time? Do you ever write? I'd love to see some of your writings. Like, start to step into a different version of identity instead of your sex. It isn't, to me, I just feel like it's so unethical. And I don't think it's unethical to not steer that way. So if somebody came in and said, I think I'm a youth, says, I think I'm a boy, but I'm a girl, or whatever, I still would be focusing on where are the symptoms? Where are the issues in your family? I still would be looking at wanting to do family therapy, wanting to bring in parents. What's going on with the dynamics of family? It's not that I would ignore the gender conversations, but I'm going to be focusing on the larger narrative and the more true narrative, which is your dad's never around. And so, of course, you're going to start thinking this because this is what your friends are thinking. And like that definitely makes sense to go connect with what your friends are doing because now you socially can be connected because you're not connected at home. So I'm going to be stirring the pot on where there's actual depth and where there's actual meaning while still honoring the client. I still want to make sure that but I'll be honest. I'll be like, I don't know if that's what are you sure that's what you think? Like, I'm going to be honest with them while maintaining my ethical, not getting sued
I want to,
guidelines.
you answer that question as a therapist. I'm wondering if I could ask the same question about youth who think they're transgender, if you could answer that as a Christian, because these are people who you and I believe are created in the image of God or are children of God and image bearers of God. And they're thinking, I'm so like deficient or, there's something wrong with me to the point where I need to kind of mutilate myself so that I'll be okay. How would you answer that as a Christian?
Oh, I would 100% speak life. Like, I would say, I see you as God's special golden nugget. He sees you, he has plans for you, and you are the apple of his eye. The enemy is trying to take away the apple. He's trying to take away the plans that he has for you, the plans that he had from beginning of time, before you were even born. When he formed you in your mother's womb, he knew the plans that he had for you. And there is a real enemy who is stealing that, is wanting to tell you that you're not special, that you need to do something, that you need to change something about you. But there is nothing about you that needs to be changed. You are perfect just the way that you are.
So, kind of looking back, stepping back, looking at society more broadly, there was a few years ago, I saw a poll that across America as a whole, for the first time in our history, church attendance dropped below 50%. So I feel like there's this kind of pulling back from spiritual faith in our country. I'm wondering, as a Christian, how would you respond to that? What do you have to say to that?
So what I think is being pulled back is people who want, I think everybody wants things to be authentic. I think people want things to be real. And I think they're pulling back from what feels fake and what doesn't feel real. So when you have a pastor who is speaking about honoring or purity and then is a jerk to his wife or a jerk to his staff, like people see that. They're like, this is confusing. You were just a jerk to all of us in this meeting, but now you're talking about, like, this is such hypocrisy. So there's that kind of stuff. So I think people are pulling away because they see things that are not real. It's not God. Like, that isn't. I don't think that is. And I don't question that. And so I think it's changing, though. I think it's coming back around. I think more people are coming back to church because they're connecting to the real Jesus, not the devotion book person. And not that devotions are bad, but when you just read something just to read it and check off the box, that's not working for people anymore. So I think there's a lot of people who are coming from the new age and are actually encountering Jesus. There are people that are Muslim that are encountering Jesus because they're stepping in it in a way where it's actually real and they're being encountered. They're meeting the real Jesus, not the, you need to do this, you have to do this, but they're actually wanting to do it. So it's coming from within, and it might be slow at first. So I don't think this will happen right away, but I do think that there is going to be a shift back into church. And I also think because of what's happened the last 4 years, 6 years, however long this has been, that people are like, this is crazy. This isn't okay. Like, there's so many people that used to be Democrat that are now like, why? What's happening? Like, I was this nice person who just wanted to help minorities and people who didn't have what they couldn't get what they, couldn't afford what they wanted to get. And I just want to help those people. Like, I think there's a lot of really good Democrats that have beautiful hearts that are now like questioning things. And I think they're coming around to actually finding out about what does God say about me, because they see that this is such destruction and it's so sad. And we're just ignoring blatant murders and killings. And I mean, this is not what we should be doing. We should be protecting people and helping people.
Really like that. What do you think is the path forward for the therapy profession?
Well, at this moment
Big
right now,
question.
as you ask that, I actually just going to confess and say I don't actually have a lot of faith for it, but let me speak it. So if I speak it, I believe the path forward is that we can actually come together with differing voices and accept each other's differing voices. So that means those who are Christian, those who are Hindu, those who are Muslim, those who support transgenderism, and come together and we actually talk about this and we figure out how do we come up with ethics when we clearly, distinctly agree something different. Your faith says that this is not okay. Your beliefs is saying that we need to support children to cut off their genitals. And like, I don't agree with that, but they do. So, but we need to come together and we need to have conversations and be in the same room. And so I think even just the guidelines, the statutes that we have written in each of our states, I think need to be reevaluated in a room full of people who think differently. And we don't have an agenda that's shoving it. And so that means either side. That means somebody who's Christian and Republican does not shove their agenda on somebody who is very Democrat and very liberal. But the problem is with those who are really, really, really woke, what we've seen, it's not really something you can negotiate with. So you need people who are kind of, and I'd say even on the right side, you have people who are really extreme. I don't think the extreme can be allowed in this conversation. So, and the extreme is if you voted for Trump, you shouldn't be a therapist. Like, that is extreme. I mean, you're cutting off 50% of people. And so to me, if you think that, then I don't think you should be having a conversation with people. And if somebody says, if you voted for Biden, you shouldn't be a therapist. I disagree with that. Does that make sense? Like, I think that we should be able to have conversations without telling the other person that they're a murderer.
Yeah, I mean, what are you seeing with this kind of political bias in therapy? Because I've seen in grad school and like looking at therapy more broadly, this idea if you voted for Trump, you shouldn't be a therapist, and even therapists saying I would never want to have a Trump supporter as a client. Like I wouldn't help somebody if they voted Republican. It seems bizarre to me. That's the opposite of the mentality of wanting to have empathy and help people. Like, what are you seeing in that regard?
So I would say that I think they're emotionally still in the acute place of Trump being elected and Trump being our president. It's only April. So this has only been however many months he's been in, 4 months or whatever. So I think they're still like they're in trauma. And I don't think their bodies have processed this. Their bodies have not gotten to the place. Cause I think about for me, when I go through like a trauma, it like takes me a little bit. I'm a little hijacked. It wouldn't take me 4 months, but it would take me a little bit. And I think that many of them need to kind of process. I think they need to kind of get through some healing of like, okay, I need to get my head on straight. And I do think some of them are going to come back around and they're going to be like, I can't live like this. This is not healthy. And that's what a lot of people have already happened, where like the woke mind virus has kind of woke people up, where they're like, I am so unhealthy. I'm so unhappy. This isn't okay. And so I do think that some of them will fall away. And I think we will still have some extreme. And I think where some of the extreme comes from are people like, who's the guy that wrote, kind of some of the books, Kendi something, I'm not.
Ibrahim Kendi?
Yep. So I was reading his book. And as I'm reading his book, I'm like, his solution was to change the policies. That's his solution. Only solution. He provided no other solution. So they're like social workers, for example, that is literally how they train social workers, that you need to, like, you're protecting the people. This is how we protect the people. You have to vote Democrat. These are the policies so they're really being trained and indoctrinated from their heart. So their heart is for people. And so because we're for people, this is how we need to vote. This is how policies need to be made. This isn't okay that these white men created this. So all of that needs to be like rooted up from the bottom. We have to take all of this out. And so their beliefs, so there's many people that is where their beliefs are at, and they're not able to have different conversations and different beliefs because it actually comes from their heart. And then their heart went to school, and then the school was trained and taught. And, they're not getting outside of that bubble of maybe there's a different way to think. And same with
Yeah,
us. Like, we all need to kind of do that.
you
Yeah.
brought up something really interesting that I've been. This is how it seems to me is that the therapy profession specifically, and also Christians to some degree, are uniquely vulnerable to being hijacked by woke ideology. Because with therapy, your primary objective, your primary lens that you have to have is empathy for the other person. And
Listen.
with Christians, it's like this, you have to have this radical compassion. And so it's like this easy entrance for someone who might have bad motives to say, well, if you really cared for these kids, then you'd support us running these medical experiments with artificial
Yeah,
hormones on
so
them,
good.
you know?
So that's such a good point. That is actually why I love having my foot in the business world. And when I'll read some of these business books, because I'm like, this is awesome. Yes, let's just get it done. Let's have hard conversations. Let's not be afraid to move forward with something that's difficult instead of just, okay, so tell me more about that you want to be a boy. Gosh, you're so brave. You're so brave because you're finally identifying that you want to be a boy and you're a girl. Like, that's not brave and that's not empathy, and so I think you're onto something there.
Thank you. I have one final question for you, and this is the one that I close with everybody. When you think about society more broadly, what is one thing that we're not talking about enough that we should be talking about more?
Okay, so I think we are not talking about the conversation of mental health more. And I think they make the conversation of mental health like diversity. that's not what this conversation is. It's like it's our lifeline. It is our peace. It is our joy. And they make it seem like it's like a thing, another like government thing, and it's not a thing. And I think the conversation of mental health has to change. Like even just shifting, because it's not, they make it really, if you look at it, it's something that like Democrats support. Oh, let's get support for these mental health programs. And Republicans are like, well, why are we going to support that? So it ends up being like this Democrat thing. It's not to me, it's not a bipartisan issue. And I think that more people yeah, and even the way that they're talking about it, it's like, well, I go to therapy or I do this. It's not about identity, like who I am. I feel like it needs to be a conversation of like the details within within the mental health, not just therapy. I went to therapy or I, got help for my mental health. Like it needs to be broken down to like confidence, identity, worth, like the specifics of why we actually need to talk about this.
I really like that. I like that a lot. Well, Heidi, thank you so much for joining me. I love this conversation. This was fascinating. I love not just your mind, but also your heart and your passion for Christ. And I love hearing that. So definitely thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. And I'd love to have you on my podcast when I get it started up again.
I would love to. I would love to anytime.